The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. One final Sunday night for the Hard Rock Empire, at least live. We will be moving to Monday starting next week on YouTube, so hopefully you will join us there. But one more live episode for now of the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. I would say we're going out with a bang, but the music this week was a little on the thin side. I still found a couple good albums to talk about. We'll do that in the second section of this program and talk about the music of June the 5th. And, of course, we're going into the vault where Mike and I will have a couple of classic albums that you need to check out. It was, like I said, interesting week as far as music, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the program. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Yeah, not a lot of releases, and honestly, not a lot that kind of fits my taste profile, if it were. Yeah, we did find some good stuff, but yeah, kind of a light week, and, you know, I don't know if this is the calm before maybe some of the summer releases start hitting or what, but I guess we'll see.
I certainly hope that's the case. Again, it was a little on the thin side. As we mentioned, the month of May had 5 weeks for releases, so I don't know if that bled over into June, that the 1st of June was a little slow as well. So it's just hard to say, but, you know, that's kind of the way it goes. But at the same time, you know, anytime we have these types of weeks, I think it does give us a chance to really dig and find some things that maybe would slide under the radar in a normal week where there might be 6, 7 really strong releases. So I really do think the picks we've made are still really strong. But going beyond those picks, there's a limited number of what we consider to be good albums. Of course, when we get to talking about the music, I'll paste the playlist that Mike puts together in the chat. So certainly go through it. There's some big name acts. Mike will be talking about those in a minute. And there are some other bands that maybe you kind of dig that type of music that you might be excited about those releases. So that's why we always encourage you to go through the playlist, because just because it doesn't necessarily appeal to the two of us doesn't mean that it's not something that might not appeal to you. A few things right off the top. As I mentioned in the very open, our last live edition for a little while, we are going to be, you know, we'd like to kind of, I don't want to say tinker with the program, but we like to try to, you know, hey, let's try this thing and let's try that thing to just try to refine it. And the reality is, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, most of our views are coming on our YouTube VOD of this. So we're deciding to basically bring the VOD first rather than doing anything live. So that's what we'll do. That's the way the program actually started many, many, many moons ago as a taped program, and it will resume that next week. It'll be on Monday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern time, starting on Mike's birthday, July the 6th. Totally coincidental, as it turns out, but that'll be coming up a week from tomorrow. So it'll be the music of June the 12th, so make sure you join us for that. We will still be doing stuff on Twitch. It will just be kind of a little more free form. We'll let you know kind of when that will happen. That probably brings me to the next point, that you should join our Discord, because that's probably where you will find when we're going to be going live on Twitch, unless we just kind of go live for fun at just a random point, which is always possible. But again, the Hard Rock Empire will move to YouTube. It'll be in VOD form basically right out of the gate, starting a week from Monday. So look forward to that. And hopefully we'll have a strong week in music to go with it. But yeah, you know, as far as outside music news, really not a whole lot I noticed this week. I felt like it was kind of slow, which tends to happen in the summertime. Feels like everybody's just kind of gearing up for maybe 4th of July shows. Obviously some big stuff with the 250th anniversary of the U.S., some big events going on around the country. Check your local listings for different concert festivals that might be running throughout the summer. It should be interesting to kind of see what's going on out there this summer. There's some good tours. We've already caught some live music. Definitely encourage you to check out your local concert venue. There's some big name acts. I saw Journey just announce the fall leg of their upcoming or their current tour that's going on. So if you haven't had the chance to check them out, definitely encourage that. But yeah, you know, it'll be interesting to see some more live shows. I think hopefully we'll try to get to a couple more before the year is over. But we're already off to a pretty good start with one really good one, and hopefully we'll get a chance to catch some more good stuff out there.
There was one story that I remember hearing earlier this week, but I haven't really looked into it. It was an announcement that evidently Rudy Sarzo admitted to using AI on his most recent solo single.
Interesting.
Yeah, here's the story from Eddie Trunk's website. Let's see. Sarzo stated, as per Blabbermouth, I come clean about that. There's even bands on the road that perform live with tracks, and they don't tell people that, hey, we got tracks. Okay, everybody, we got tracks, and they don't do that. But I come clean. I say, yeah, I use artificial intelligence. I don't have a budget. Who has a budget? Like, I don't have a budget to go home, spend 10 grand and dump it in the studio just for songs that'll be released independently to all the streaming services. You know, I think, and I need to read more into this because I think, while I'm not a fan of the idea, I just want people to be transparent about it.
Yeah.
I mentioned that before. And honestly, I think a lot of people work jobs where they're expected to find unique ways to bring in AI and use it to enhance what you're doing. And, if musicians out there are finding interesting ways to incorporate the use of AI into their music, I at least want to know about it. Then I can decide how I feel on the ethical end of it, one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm pretty much against AI in music, I think. But at the same time, I'm against a lot of those types of tools that have been around for a long time. I think auto-tune did more damage to the music industry than it did help. I think, and that's one of those things that people would come in and say, well, you look at like the EDM type music where they used auto-tune as like a musical instrument, basically, to distort voices to, give it the same sound as your background music, and it's the same sort of thing. Yeah, obviously transparency is important. It'd be nice to be transparent up front. It's a lot easier to be transparent on the backside of something like that and say, oh, yeah, I did that thing. If you bought it, well, sucks to be you that you thought this was something that was unique and created by people and turns out I got your money and now I'm coming clean. Look at me. I'm great. Like, yeah, up front. Tell people up front what you're doing and then let them decide whether they want to support it or not. And, I think there are probably people, I think it's pretty cowardly to just say, well, there are people out on tour using AI and they're just not telling people. Like, well, number one, call them out. Like, if you're a big enough name in the industry, you're not going to get blackballed by the industry at this point. I mean, let's face it, a lot of those artists are on the fringe of the industry anymore anyway. But it's like, people doing it, say something, if you're, I think a lot of it, maybe people were just assuming, oh, that band sounds too good. It's got to be fake. Well, yeah, I guess you don't want to come out and accuse them of that for fear of getting sued. But yeah, I think you've got to tell people up front about that stuff and then let them decide whether it's okay. I don't think you get to make that decision as an artist and then tell people after you've already made them buy something of yours that it wasn't on the up and up. It's the same way as Milli Vanilli, just on a new plane, basically. They, good for the people who sang the songs, but you ripped off all those people who thought those two guys were singing it and then took all their money. And then, they had to give their awards back, but they still had all that money. A record label had all that money. Like, who's the sucker there? It's all the people who went out and bought those albums. So, yeah.
That's a weird one anyway, because if you would have just been on the up and up about that and just said, here are the musicians that actually did it, you could have Milli Vanilli as the visual representation on the music videos and no one would have cared.
Yeah.
Those were good songs.
Well, and they were 30 years too early for things like a VTuber or something where you could have had some sort of like AI hologram, something that could have basically just been the front facing vision of your band and then actually have musicians making the music. Like back then it was, I think some of that stuff did happen, but it was definitely frowned upon when that stuff was found out. But yeah, AI music's always going to be a hot topic. Better, I guess, that he admitted it because I think for some people, they probably won't support anything he does at this point because it's like, well, are you going to admit it the next time or are you going to just do it and then not tell us or whatever it may be? And there could be some people that appreciate the honesty and are okay with, going ahead and supporting him because they like his music over the years. But yeah, it's a problem. And, the problem is now everybody online assumes anything that sounds too good is AI.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it every week when we look at reviews of these albums we review. It's like, oh, that's AI slop. That's, that's clearly not human produced. And, For bands out there, we talk about it all the time. If you want to avoid that, you have got to do everything in your power to avoid using AI in things like music videos and album covers, because the moment you introduce that thought into somebody's head that it might not be legit, they're just going to assume everything you do is not legit. And even this week, they were going through the videos. There were a handful of videos again this week that were clearly use of AI. And again,
if you're doing it on the visually obvious stuff,
how am I going to assume you're not doing it on the music or writing the lyrics or whatever it may be? And yeah, I think there should be. And if you're a record label and you have somebody working for you that's doing that and you're not disclosing it and you're aware of it, then that's really on you. Because the record label, even to this day, is still making a big portion of these album sales. Yeah. If you're not actually out there being upfront and transparent about it, then that's a record label I don't want to support probably going forward. So it's a messy issue for sure, and it's not going to get any clearer anytime soon because the temptation is too great to make something that is really polished right out of the gate. And, I think the people that it's going to hurt first probably are these solo instrumentalists that we see probably maybe once a month, where it's some one guy who's basically doing this entire album. And it's like, you want to believe that everything on that album is him actually playing the music, but as AI becomes more prominent, you have to start asking questions like, is this guy really or gal really doing all this, or is he augmenting his talents with artificial intelligence?
Again, just be transparent. Say what you did. Let people decide from there.
Yeah, and my guess is that's not going to happen because I think the backlash is too great, especially for these bands that are trying to break up. Rudy Sarzo's in a spot where he's made it. He has succeeded. Like, for these bands that we see every week that we've never heard of before that are just coming on the scene, I think it can be very tempting to take a shortcut. And I
also think he's someone, based on his position in music and how long he's been around, if he comes out and says, hey, I wrote this single, I used AI, here's what I used it on, you're not going to get as much blowback because it's a single.
Yeah.
It's one single by a guy who's released numerous albums over the years. If anything, to me, it's potentially a neat experiment, even if it's something I'm not interested in listening to necessarily.
Yeah.
It's... You've what is the phrase I want to use? You've earned a certain level of where you are. Like at this point, you're not trying to make it. Like you have credibility.
But I think you can throw some of that credibility away if you're not transparent beforehand instead of after. Like, I think if you say like, look, here's where I'm at in my career. I can't do all these things anymore, so I'm going to use AI so I can keep making music. Feel free to buy it or not buy it, depending on how you feel about that. But this is what I want to do creatively so I can keep doing the thing I love. Then I think that's completely fine then. Like, and people will or won't support it. I imagine his hardcore fans would probably support it anyway. Maybe a few casuals might not. But again, it's easy to be upfront after it's all done. Like, be upfront at the beginning. And who knows, maybe him stepping up and saying something is going to be usher in an era of more transparency in music because that's what we need. And we'll see. I mean, it's a topic that, and the thing is the technology's gotten so good that us listening to these albums, we can't always tell when something is AI or not.
I'm not enough of an audiophile to find like whatever artifacts that people can tell. That's just not me.
Yeah, because there's a fine line between they just created this drum beat in AI, or they just use a drum machine, or they looped a drum part. Like, there's lots of different ways you can create the same effect that are all different variations of using the technology you have, whether you're using, audio software, whether you're using, a drum, something as simple as a drum machine has been around forever. But yeah, it's a messy topic, but one that's not going away. Like I said, we won't talk about it every week because we could probably talk about it every week because there's always some news story about it out there. But it kind of gets to be depressing, honestly, to talk about AI related topics in music because there's a lot of stuff out there. So, but yeah, so we'll move on from that and get to the new music for this week. Of course, Mike has gone through and put together a playlist, and as we mentioned, a little on the thin side this week as far as stuff that we really enjoyed, but we will paste that playlist into the chat. Actually, I think that might be the wrong playlist. I think that's last week's playlist. So I will update that while Mike is talking about his band. And to do that, I'm going to have to make sure I mute all the audio tracks coming from the computer so I don't accidentally start playing it. So we'll do that. But again, the music is the music of June the 5th. Overall, I thought it was, again, a little on the thin side, but, we'll see. Yeah, as you go through the playlist, as you check it out, there could be more stuff on there that you enjoy, so definitely give that a listen. And while I am correcting the link for this playlist, I'll let Mike go through some of the big name acts, re-releases, interesting names, all that sort of stuff that we have on the playlist every week.
So yeah, there were a few actual big releases that came out. I don't want to make it sound like nothing was released on the 5th, but the newest one from Evanescence came out, Sanctuary. That's their 6th studio album from Amy Lee and company. Evergrey released Architects of a New Weave, the newest album from the Swedish progressive metal band. Also a live album from Voivod, Symphonique, was released. They're a Canadian metal band, been around forever. A couple that I listened to this week that I actually did enjoy that I did not pick. We have Stranded by Choice releasing the album Marooned in Stone. They're a Montana-based hard rock band. Check that out. And also an EP from the band The 69 Eyes, a Finnish gothic rock band, released I Survive. I thought that was pretty enjoyable as well. Moving on to the re-releases, we had one which, again, these anniversaries sometimes just make you feel really old. This one here, Drowning Pool, Sinner, 25th anniversary of their groundbreaking breakthrough album. Several special vinyl pressings out there that you can find. Also an expanded digital version that has some bonus tracks. Oddly enough, I didn't see a listing for a CD among the anniversary sets out there. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it doesn't exist. I don't know. But I kind of feel like something that came out in 2001, if you're re-releasing it in a special form, that's kind of still CD era. And people that would be interested in that might still be throwing CDs in their player.
I still don't understand that one. That's really weird to me. But yeah, crazy. That's been 25 years already. That's pretty wild, honestly. It's funny because I just saw a video unrelated to music, but it was one of those Watch Mojo videos that came up on my YouTube that was talking about like 11 things you need to know about Ocean's 11 25 years later. It's like, oh, wow, that's depressing. It's been 25 years since the first Ocean's 11 came out. That doesn't feel like it's been that old.
No,
but it's the same sort of deal right there. But, yeah, a couple other things. Well, you mentioned the 69 Eyes one. I enjoyed that as well. What I listened to of Midnight Rider, Limited Infinity, was pretty solid as well. And then there was one from Syra that overall just, had some good tracks in there. I think if it's worth giving it a listen to see if it's kind of up your alley, but it's one that I thought was a little more hit and miss than maybe some of the other stuff on the list this week. So your mileage may vary, as always. That's why we put it all on there. But the playlist is correctly now pasted into the chat, so definitely check that out. But it is time to get to the stuff that we did pick. And overall, I think we had more than two, but we certainly had two very solid albums this week to talk about. So, Mike, what do you got for us for your pick?
Yeah, so for my pick this week, we are looking at a French heavy metal band with their debut full-length album. They are Seven Metal Sins, and the album is Legacy of Chaos.
It's amazing how many times I've typed this band's name and typed the word sings instead of sins.
I do the same thing. I can't keep from just hitting that G.
Don't know why that is, but no, this was one that I heard the track on the playlist and it didn't immediately resonate with me, but when I went back and listened to the full album, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. Like, I knew it had potential, and it was definitely, of the albums this week, one of the ones that potential was magnified by the album and didn't kind of run stagnant from there. These guys formed in 2024. The band consists of Stefan Lacode on bass, Patrick Soria on drums, Anton Iriart on guitars, Clovis Gay on vocals, and Frederick Auclerc on guitars as well. Their Bandcamp refers to them as heavy power metal. Their label, Rock Shots, describes the album, calling it focus and cohesive blend of heavy metal, power metal, and speed metal, combining sharp riffing, dynamic rhythms, and a strong melodic framework with a modern, precise production. Angry Metal Guy points out, and I would agree, that the singer, Clovis Gay, has a voice that's made for metal. He has kind of that gruff but melodic delivery, works really well with the riffing on the album. Rock Shots would tell you that these guys are for fans of Judas Priest, except Primal Fear and early Halloween. I would agree with that. It's power metal, but definitely more on the metal side of it than what you think of like power metal, like kind of later Halloween, Ed Guy type stuff like that. It's definitely more on the accept side of things. Overall, though, really solid release. Standout tracks include Scars of Injustice, No Sanctuary, Wolves of the Last Dawn, King of Sorrow, and the track that we're going to listen to, Eternal Downfall.
Let's check these guys out. Seven Metal Sins with their new album, Legacy of Chaos. This is the 5th track on that album, Eternal Downfall. Let's check out a little bit of that now.
Kill, shadows are dancing on the wall, cutting seconds as they fall. I secret the final prayer, holds my dreams like living there. Eternal downfall, rage inside your brain. Eternal downfall, synapses are firing, but they feel the pain. Eternal downfall, face what lies within. Eternal downfall, shadows of your nightmares rolling through your skin.
Yeah, you mentioned the vocals. I think that's what, it took me a minute to kind of get into them, because when you just listen to a snippet of one song, the vocals don't immediately grab you, but like in the context of all the music, it works really well. I think having a little bit of melody, but a little bit of gruffness, I think once you get into it and you kind of get used to it in kind of with their music, like I think it really works well. And this was a really, really strong album. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, it took a minute to get into it, but once I got into the album, like as I listened track after track, it almost got better and better as you went through the album.
Yeah, I thought so as well. And, always cool to see new metal coming out of France. So check it out.
France has kind of been on a run with metal, some big bands that have made kind of big splashes on the big scene. So good to see another one. So definitely check those guys out. Really strong release from them out on June the 5th. As we've talked about on the podcast, I generally will find something that is AOR type melodic rock to latch onto. When you have a week where there really is no melodic rock and AOR, the next best bet for me typically is new wave of traditional heavy metal. So that's where we're going this week. We are going to Canada for our new wave of traditional heavy metal. This is a heavy metal band from Surrey, British Columbia. This is Iron Kingdom with Shadows and Dust. This band was formed in 2011, although they started in 2004 as Twisted. This is their 6th full-length album, and the first since 2022's The Blood of Creation. The band is made up of Chris Osterman on lead vocals and lead guitar, Leighton Holmes on bass guitar, Max Friesen on drums, and Megan Merrick on lead guitar. If you're a fan of new wave of traditional heavy metal, there's a good chance this band is probably already on your playlist. They absolutely nail the sound in a way that makes the album sound fresh without sounding dated or too much of a throwback. The new wave of traditional heavy metal website really likes these guys. They rated this album a 9.5 out of 10, calling it a continuation of the band's upward trajectory in a way that is both concise and still varied. They thought their 2022 Blood of Creation album was an absolute clinic in modern metal perfection, and it would have been a tough act to follow, but Iron Kingdom did so with gusto. They thought the 2022 album was maybe one of the best of the year, and they've said the same for this one as well. The website lists it as a band for fans of Halloween, Riot, Iron Maiden, Sabotage, and Judas Priest. I really felt like the Iron Maiden and Judas Priest influences were very strongly felt throughout this album of those other bands. Only 3 of the 10 tracks are longer than 5 minutes. The other ones really just felt like they got in, they got what they needed to get done, and they got out without overstaying their welcome. This is a band that feels very polished without feeling overproduced. Everybody does their thing really well. Vocals are strong, guitars are strong, drums are strong, without kind of overshining anybody, and it didn't feel like it was just too produced. It just feels like a band that's hitting their stride 6 albums in, really know what they want to get out of an album release, and they really get that. It's just a great hard rock album. I thought it was really solid beginning to end. Standout tracks include Eternal Emperor, Dead House Gates, Line of Fire. And the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Defenders. Let's check these guys out. It's Iron Kingdom with Shadows and Dust. This is the opening track off of this album, Defenders. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Under the shadow of the dark, I'm waiting down for night and day. For every step we'll make them
You know, this is basically the third time I've heard this track because I've gone through the album a couple times. There's even a little Axl Rose in there, just a little bit. Like, it's like, what if Axl Rose sang for Judas Priest type of thing?
Kind of a blend of the two, for sure.
Yeah, but overall, I thought it was really strong. I really do like this type of music. Sometimes it can feel a little too dated, but I thought these guys found a way to do that in a way that didn't make it feel like a throwback. So good stuff from Iron Kingdom. Mike, your thoughts?
I love what Angry Metal Guy said about it, kind of in the closing remarks of his review. He gave it 3.5 out of 5, but his last paragraph says, "The Iron Kingdom has proved to be a worthy and fun place to visit. It's far less expensive than the budget-breaking Magic Kingdom and far less brutal than the Steel Kingdom. Sure, you can go back and spin classics like Keeper of the Seven Keys a whole bunch, but it's also fun to hear some fresh songs in the genre from newer bands who know how to write a good lick or two." Yeah, I mean, love Halloween's Keeper of the Seven Keys, but yeah, you want those bands still out there doing it, newer bands, and it's great to hear.
Yeah, really good stuff from the Canadians. Well done, Iron Kingdom. Definitely worth checking that out as well this week. So we're going to step aside if you were on Twitch for a quick 90-second ad break. If you are subscribed, of course, you won't get ads. If you are on YouTube, you will not get ads. But Mike and I will chat for about 90 seconds, and we'll get to the vault where we will talk about a couple of classic albums that you need to check out. So hang around for that coming up on the other side of this ad break once the ad break gets rolling on Twitch. And we are waiting for that. Now it is underway. But yeah, I'm curious to see what next week holds. It's always fun to get to choose something a little outside the box. I do sometimes kind of narrow in on the AOR stuff, maybe a little too heavily. But to me, and I've said it before, the amount of new wave of traditional heavy metal stuff that's out there was a big surprise to me doing this podcast because I just didn't realize there were so many new bands playing that style of music in 2026.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know there were that many bands playing AOR music nowadays too. So pretty much every subgenre you're looking for, there's some representation out there. You just might have to dig a little bit. Kind of looking at next week, just really quick on Loudwire. We do got one, let's see, from Edu Falashi. He, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, former singer from Angra.
Oh, okay.
So that could be good. Let's see. Best of Triumph.
I mean, everybody should own that. Like,
I'm sure that's not the first time they've released a best of, but Vandenplas with Act Cult 2.
Okay, that'll probably be good.
Let's see. That's all that's jumping out at me right now.
Well, we'll see what's out there next week. We'll see if it's...
Yeah, and obviously the other website has a huge list usually. So.
Yeah. Well, that's good that there's at least a couple already off of the shorter list that maybe have some potential. So tune in to find out 1 week from tomorrow. That is Monday, July the 6th. We will be on YouTube. You see the address on the screen, youtube.com/@NerdcastEmpire. That's where you will find it. 7 o'clock Eastern time next Monday night. Same great time, same great channel, just different time. We won't be on Twitch for this, but we will still be on Twitch from time to time. So for our Twitch people, find us on YouTube, but we'll still be here from time to time doing some other stuff. So make sure you're still around for that. It is time to get into the vault where Mike and I will talk about a couple of classic albums you need to check out. And we definitely have 2 albums that I would consider to be classics this week. I feel like we've been in a good run of that, especially as both of us have kind of been for different reasons around in the 70s and early 80s. So there's been some interesting stuff in there. But you're continuing on through the years of the 70s this week, and you got one that is definitely on my list to listen to at some point. But tell us about your vault pick this week.
Yeah, so we are moving on to 1978. Huge year. A lot of big debuts. A lot of bands either now really like hitting their stride or have hit their stride in bands kind of reaching the end of the road with certain members. As far as debuts go, you have the first Van Halen album. Not one that would be on my radar, but I have to mention it. Kate Bush released her debut, The Kick Inside. The only reason that really resonates with me is because two of her songs I know from metal covers of them. Angra covered Wuthering Heights on their debut album, and then also Jorn Land covered one of her songs as well.
So Running Up That Hill?
Yeah. So that was kind of noteworthy for that reason.
Sure.
Quiet Riot released their first two albums in Japan only in 1978, 1 and 2. Didn't realize those never came over here, but that was prior to kind of their classic lineup when they still had Randy Rhoads in the band. So
okay.
Kind of noteworthy there. The only song that I was really super familiar with from those two albums was Slick Black Cadillac, which was on their greatest hits. But that was also before Rudy Sarzo joined their band. He's actually the only kind of classic member left in the band. They're still out there doing it. Frankie Banali passed away a few years back. Obviously, Kevin Dubrode passed away numerous years ago. Yeah, I saw Jizzy Pearl's actually singing for them. So
okay.
at least someone who you've heard of, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Dire Straits released their debut in 1978. The band Kiss, every individual member released a solo album as kind of like a gimmicky thing where the Kiss solo albums all came out in 78. Toto released their debut. Whitesnake released their debut album, Trouble. The Police released their debut, Outlandos d'Amor. So yeah, huge year for debuts. Also a lot of big albums. Journey released Infinity in 1978. Genesis released And Then There Were Three. Rainbow released Long Live Rock and Roll, which was the final album featuring Ronnie James Dio. REO Speedwagon released their greatest titled album, You Can Tune a Piano, but You Can't Tune a Fish. Foreigner released Double Vision, which is an amazing album, and I would have picked it, but I'm really familiar with it. I've heard it so many times, I felt like that would kind of be cheating.
That was one that I picked when we went through as well, so we have talked
great
about
album.
it. Yeah.
Yesterday and Today released Struck Down. Boston released Don't Look Back. Black Sabbath released Never Say Die, which was the last album to feature Ozzy until 2013 when they got back together. Then there were the two that I was kind of juggling. Well, really maybe three that I was considering. One was a band I'd already picked, so I went away from that, and that was Queen and their album Jazz. The other one that I was considering but didn't pick was Styx, released Pieces of Eight.
Oh, yeah, it's a great album.
What I ended up going with is the sixth studio album from a Canadian progressive rock band. Maybe you have heard of them. They are Rush, and the album is Hemispheres.
Yeah, that's obviously two big ones there, and we finish up. I'll mention just briefly about Pieces of Eight because that is a really great album that Six was actually doing on tour, I think, pretty recently, where they were doing the whole album in its entirety. But yeah, obviously Rush, and of course Rush in the news as they've resumed touring, and what sounds like they were fantastic shows out on the West Coast. And but yeah, this is one of those albums that's always been on the list to check out, and I haven't had the chance to do so, but you've done that now. So what was this album like?
Yeah, let's talk about it. And unfortunately, when you talk about a Rush album, I mean this with all due respect, they're some of the least interesting personalities. Like, you're not going to read a bunch of drama typically on the Wikipedia page of their entry. They pretty much had that classic lineup that just persisted. Obviously, this album is the follow-up to 1977's A Farewell to Kings. The album obviously features Geddy Lee on bass guitar, Mini Moog synthesizer, Oberheim polyphonic synthesizer, Moog Taurus bass pedals and vocals, Alex Lifeson on 6 and 12-string electric and acoustic guitars, classical guitar, Roland guitar synthesizer, and Moog Taurus pedals, and Neil Peart on drums, orchestral bells, bell tree, timpani, gong, cowbells, temple blocks, wind chimes, and crotals, which are like a weird set of little cymbals, kind of, that I was not familiar that they existed. despite the synths being on this album, to me, this still is really guitar driven. Alex Lifeson, like a lot of his stuff on there really stands out. Having listened to numerous prog albums between 1969 and 1977, the thought of diving into a Rush album didn't really faze me. Honestly, compared to some of those other ones, this was really approachable and really accessible. Album is only 36 minutes long and 4 songs. Granted, 4 songs clocking in at 36 minutes is impressive, but still, it's a pretty quick listen. You get in and out pretty fast. The reason I picked it mainly was because I only knew the Trees off of this album very well, but people talk a lot about La Via Strangiato, so I felt like I really needed to get familiar with that song, which, after having listened to the album a few times, I feel like I'm sure I've heard that song, whether it was just in like Rush documentaries or what. It felt really familiar, even if I couldn't have told you what it was going into this. The album starts with what is essentially the title track, the 18-minute long Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres. It's a sequel song to the final track from A Farewell to Kings, Cygnus X1 Book 1 The Voyage. I've not yet listened to that, so I feel bad kind of jumping in on the sequel, but I can't really compare the two. I do know that this track feels kind of like peak progressive rock Rush. It's awesome, but it is very, very progressive. The next track, Circumstances, was the album's one single released along with The Trees as its B-side. Both of those songs are really great. I can see where you would think Circumstances would be the single, but I think despite The Trees being a weird song, it's the stronger of the two. It could just be I'm more familiar with it, but I like The Trees. You get to La Via Strangiato, an exercise in self-indulgence. The song was inspired by dreams that Alex Lifeson had. Apparently, he would keep explaining these dreams, and they were just getting weirder and weirder, and it kind of became like a running joke between he and Geddy. The song's wild. There are times where, like I mentioned, I felt like I'd heard it before, and maybe I have. I don't know whether that's just from Rush or if bands since then have lifted pieces from it as like a tribute. I think that could certainly be the case as well. The album's awesome. I don't, not a whole lot else to say about it. They did mention that the album took the longest to create of any of the prior Rush albums. And apparently the recording sessions were pretty exhausting, which led the band towards future releases having more concise radio-friendly compositions, and you'd find that on Permanent Waves, their next album. But yeah, if you want peak prog Rush that doesn't feel as hard to get into as some of the earlier 70s prog stuff that was out there, definitely check this out.
Yeah, I say that this is an album I want to check out. I've heard 2 of these songs, obviously The Trees and La Via Strangiato, because I think that was a song that so many people had talked about. I think I just went and listened to it at some point. I do feel like making Circumstances in The Trees your A and B side singles is a little deceiving when that's 7 minutes out of the other 2 tracks are 27 combined minutes. So
yeah.
I feel like you're baiting people into thinking that the album these are going to be on is going to be like a bunch of 3 and 4 minute songs, and in reality, that's not the case.
Well, I also could have led with half the songs on this album were released in single form.
That's true.
And that would have been equally as kind of deceiving.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the crodals, which are also known as the antique cymbals, the Wikipedia notes that Neil Peart used them as part of his basic drum kit for several years, and featuring them in the introduction to the instrumental YYZ. Was also used by Alan White of Yes. Not a huge shock there.
No.
Another band that definitely is not afraid to step out into the space. Album produced by Terry Brown. He did a lot, if not all, of Rush's stuff, but also notable because it came up earlier. He also did 1991's Voivod album, Angel Rat.
Okay.
We were talking about Voivod earlier, and also did 1982's release by Lawrence Gowan called Gowan, of course. That takes us into the other band you mentioned, because Lawrence Gowan, of course, took over for Dennis DeYoung as the keyboard player for Styx. So, of course, Gowan, a Canadian as well. So it looks like he was involved with a lot of Canadian bands. Also did some stuff for Fates Warning, Dream Theater. So obviously, yeah, if you want to get the guy that's done stuff for Rush.
Yeah, whether you're Canadian or a prog band, Terry Brown's kind of royalty.
Yeah, for sure. Just quick note on Pieces of Eight. That was a good album as well. Some different stuff on there, like Sing for the Day, which is kind of an upbeat, jaunty song. It's kind of a weird album, too, with songs like The Message and Lords of the Ring. But Blue Collar Man is on there and really was kind of one of those, and Renegade. So you had, and Queen of Spades. So you had 3 tracks really at the beginning of that second side that really were more rock driven. So you kind of felt like that was the rock faction of Styx kind of making their statement that this is what we want to do. And obviously Blue Collar Man and Renegade were huge hits. Now obviously they would take a step back because they still had some weird stuff to do as they were getting into the 80s. But,
sure.
But yeah, good album as well. Like I said, one that they were doing in their entirety. But yeah, Rush, obviously amazing. I would definitely like to check out the other tracks off of this that I haven't listened to, but it's Rush. You know kind of what you're going to get with them. But good stuff as well from Rush on that album. And we're going to get into my vault run with Journey. And I mentioned that we were going to jump ahead to the next album release, but as I found out when I got there, the next album is actually a live album. So I don't really want to include that in my rankings, but I do want to mention it briefly. The live album in question was Captured. It was the first live album released by the band, released on January 30th, 1981. Reached number 9 on the Billboard 200 chart. Went on to sell 2 million copies. It's good. Obviously, it's kind of their greatest hits up to that point. It's a lot of the recordings, which ended up being the last stuff that Greg Rowley did with the band before he would leave. So it's worth checking out for sure. You kind of get the feeling of Steve Perry's stage presence when you listen to this. You kind of see like he's clearly the one running the show. Two notes about that album. In the liner notes, the album is dedicated to AC/DC lead singer Bon Scott, who died in February of 1980. Scott is referred to as a friend from the highway, as AC/DC had supported Journey in the previous year on their If You Want Blood tour. So kind of wild to think AC/DC and Journey touring together,
yeah.
But kind of cool. Sad, obviously, that Bon Scott passed away in 1980. And there was one new song on that album. It was The Party's Over, Hopelessly in Love. That's a good track. Definitely worth checking out. And again, kind of a sign of where Journey was going to go. And then they went there with my vault pick for this week, and it is Escape, released on July 17th, 1981. It topped the Billboard 200 chart, U.S. Billboard 200 chart, and featured 4 hit Billboard Hot 100 singles. Don't Stop Believin' was number 9. Who's Crying Now, number 4. Still They Ride, number 19. And Open Arms, number 2. Plus the rock radio staple Stone in Love. July 2021, it was certified diamond by the RIAA for selling at least 10 million copies in the U.S., making it the band's most successful studio album and second most successful album overall behind their greatest hits. Escape was the 5th highest selling album of 1981. Featured the introduction of Jonathan Cain as the keyboardist, replacing Greg Rowley. The album was co-produced by former Leonard Skinner sound technician Kevin Elson and one-time Queen engineer Mike Stone, who also engineered the album. So, again, you have this change in lineup, you have this change in leadership, sound, and you also are bringing in guys who have had a lot of success on the back end to produce this. The band at the time, Steve Perry on lead vocals, Neil Sean on lead guitar backing vocals, and the rolling guitar synthesizer on Open Arms. Jonathan Cain on keyboards, rhythm guitar, and backing vocals. Ross Valerie on bass and backing vocals, and Steve Smith on drums. The reviews are pretty funny on this one, mostly really good. Mike DeGagna of AllMusic gave it 4.5 stars out of 5, saying the songs are timeless and as a whole they have a way of rekindling the innocence of youthful romance and the rebelliousness of growing up. That's a heck of a word.
Yeah.
Built from heartfelt songwriting and sturdy musicianship. Colin Larkin awarded the album 4 out of 5 stars in the 2002 edition of the Virgin Encyclopedia of Popular Music. The Rolling Stone review at the time were less favorable. In a review dated October 29, 1981, Deborah Frost dismissed the band as heavy metal lightweights who utilized a hard rock pose and characterized the musicianship as that of fluff-brained sessioneers. Gave the album 1 star out of 5. In the 2004 edition of their album guide, Rolling Stone awarded the album 2.5 stars out of 5, which nonetheless was an improvement from the 1-star rating back in 1983. Some other accolades of this album. Kerrang! In 1988 voted this the greatest AOR album of all time. Classic Rock expressed the same opinion in 2008. In 1989, Kerrang! Ranked Escape as the number 32 of the 100 greatest heavy metal albums of all time. Virgin Poll in 2000 saw the 24th greatest heavy metal alternative rock album of all time. The list goes on and on. This really is their first truly great album, one that would hold up against any of the other albums being released at the time. Don't Stop Believin' has become very overplayed, but there's a reason for that, because it is a great song. Time has just, everybody uses it, so you do get tired of hearing it on the radio, but there's no question there's a reason that it has become overplayed. The whole first side is really top-notch with Stone in Love, Who's Crying Now, Keep on Running, and Still They Ride. Title track starts side 2 with very strong but underplayed tracks, Lay It Down, Dead or Alive, and Mother Father, setting up the another mega hit, Open Arms, to wrap it up. It's clearly their best album to date, and will certainly be in the discussion at the end of this exercise as their greatest album ever. We'll put the tier list before this album up on the screen now. And at the end, I've decided there will only be one best of the best, because I feel like that's just the way it should be. There should just be one at the top. So for now, it will take that spot as the best of the best, but there's some more big albums coming, so we'll see if it remains up there, but it will stay at the number 1 spot for now. Standout tracks, the whole album is great. You should listen to all of it, but honestly, 2 of my favorite songs off of this album that are underplayed are Stone in Love and Still They Ride. I think they're very underrated songs off of this album, especially Still They Ride. Stone in Love did make the radio charts, but really, really great stuff. This is about as good as it gets as far as AOR music, and you could see these guys have just reached superstardom with this album, and that was just going to continue, because in 2 weeks we're going to be talking about Frontiers, another mega album from the band. But Mike, this is what we knew was coming, and this is just Journey at its absolute best.
It's funny. I was obviously negative 1 year old when this came out, so maybe I don't know because I wasn't there, but it's weird for the one Rolling Stone review to refer to them as heavy metal lightweights. I don't remember them ever being billed as a heavy metal band,
right?
Despite the fact that Kerrang! Would later go on to suggest that Escape is number 32 on the 100 greatest heavy metal albums of all time. Now, granted, and that was in 1989, which is wild, because to me, moving forward, I feel like maybe they expanded the definition of heavy metal, and maybe that would have made sense, but maybe not by 1989. These guys were a rock band.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't
make them lesser. It's just,
yeah, it's just, they set out to write an album full of hits, and they succeeded. Let's celebrate that.
And I felt like that was the most notable thing to me on this album, was it felt like an album of hits.
Yeah.
It felt like their goal was to write 10 hit songs. It wasn't an album where there was a thread running through it like so many of their previous albums, where you felt like one track kind of bled into the next, and sometimes explicitly, but even implicitly. Like, this just felt like radio song, radio song, radio song. It was just, again, that can sound like criticism. It's not, because they made $1 bazillion off of this. But it's just, this is AOR music at its best. And, I guess in 1981, when your definition of metal would maybe be a little bit different, because the bands you're comparing it to aren't the metal that we would see in 1989 when Kerrang! Or 88 when Kerrang! Would come out with that list. Like,
true, metal was very much, modern metal was in its infancy, for sure.
For sure. Like, so, if you're comparing it to, Black Sabbath and bands like that from the 70s, like, maybe you consider this a branch of metal, but yeah, I mean, metal as we would know it would not describe Journey, and nor would they have ever came out and said, we're a metal band. Like, no, we're just a we're a rock band. We're a band that's coming out. They're not a prog rock band anymore. That's gone. Like, there's no prog in this album at all. It is very much mainstream AOR rock, but it's really, really good, and that's what it comes down to. And this is going to be the beginning of a stretch of albums where they're just going to be mega hits. And the next one is another monster in 2 weeks, and you just see kind of what they're doing. But I do encourage everybody to check out that live album, because you really do get a feel for Steve Perry's stage presence and stuff in between songs, and you just feel like This was him taking over the band from a guy like Greg Rowley, and probably Rowley realizing it, seeing it, and being like, it's probably time for me to move on and do my own thing, because he's about to take this both in a different direction musically, but also really just kind of make it his own.
Yeah.
Which again it happens in bands, but
I'm glad that they learned from Infinity, and this time they put the slow song at the end of the album.
Yes.
They didn't
Lead
like with Infinity leading with lights. Like,
yeah.
that isn't the opener, guys.
It's not. That is not an opening song for anything. Yeah, Open Arms at the end is perfect. That's exactly how you want to end the album, and that may be an underrated track. Like, because
That's a great
I feel like,
song.
I feel like, anytime you have a ballad, sometimes it doesn't get the credit it deserves. And I think there are other songs the band has that maybe people think of first. But as far as like a rock ballad,
Yeah.
that's about as good as you can do right there.
And that kind of leads to the next question. Is Journey enough of a rock band per se for Open Arms to be a power ballad?
Maybe. That's a great question. Like,
I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I might have to listen to it again with that question in mind, because I really don't know whether I would consider it.
I don't know if it's a power ballad or just a love song.
Yeah, it kind of is. Like, because you think about the prevailing instrument in that is the two prevailing instruments are the drums and the keyboard.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a guitar song, really. It's on an album that has a lot of guitar songs, but that one isn't. It's even noted in the band notes that Neil Schon plays the Roland guitar synthesizer on Open Arms. So clearly that's the driver there. Yeah, it is probably not a power ballad. It is probably just a ballad.
Yeah.
Which is okay. But awesome album. Highly recommended. Can't stress that enough. But we'll definitely continue on through the Journey run and see if it ends up being the best Journey album by the time it's all said and done. With that noted, it's time to wrap up this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Thank you so much for joining us again. One final time. Well, two things. One, join the Discord, because that's where you're going to see any schedule changes. If we're going to go live on Twitch, you'll see us there. Join the Discord. Very important. Number two, again, 1 week from tomorrow, July the 6th, Monday, July 6th, 7 o'clock Eastern. That's when the next episode of the Hard Rock Empire will air. It'll be on YouTube only, and it'll be the music of June the 12th. It'll be episode number 122 of the Hard Rock Empire, so we hope you'll join us there on YouTube. So don't forget, that's coming up, and I'll have social media reminders as well coming up next week. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for his hard work on the podcast. Big thanks to Stoveleg Media for their continued support, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you're listening. Happy 4th of July if you're in the U.S. Happy Canada Day if you're in Canada coming up this week. And otherwise, I hope you have a good week and try to stay cool out there. And until next week on YouTube on Monday, we'll join you then. But until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.